For our COBT listeners and viewers, it's Maynard with something that we thought you would really enjoy for your Labor Day weekend and enjoy broadly, because we want to publicize some great friends and a great event that's coming up. We're lucky today to have Senator Kay Bailey Hutchison with us. You know her for an incredible career in the Senate. You may know that she was the ambassador to NATO. And you may further know that the Kay Bailey Hutchison Center at Texas is now a place for great energy thought. And on September 13th, they're going to be having their annual symposium. We'll talk a little bit about that, the issues, the people attending, how it all came together. But really, it's the cause. It was the excuse to grab the senator and talk about today's world. And we're also really lucky to have John Rutherford with us. John is a longtime energy thinker, doer, investment banker. He's just really active in energy circles his whole career. He's on the board at Enterprise and TD Williamson, but he's also on the board at the KBH Center at Texas. And so he's going to help us talk a little bit about what's going on, what's on the menu for September 13th. So let me just stop and say, Senator, we're so glad to have you. It's always so much fun to visit with you, and we really appreciate everything you're doing for energy up at the KBH Center at Texas.
Well, thank you so much, Maynard. I'm really looking forward to the great program that John Rutherford is co-chairing the whole program and put together a wonderful event. It's our 10th anniversary. We are now really rolling with a symposium that you're going to be the moderator for. And we got you back again because you did such a great job last year, kind of weaving everything together throughout the day and taking what one panel said and talking to another panel about those issues. And I think it's one of the great things about our annual symposium that we do bring new information. We bring sort of what's out there that maybe you haven't talked about yet in the energy field. And so I'm very excited and so happy that John Rutherford is with us to talk about some of the panels and the speakers that we have.
Well, I'm going to interrupt you, and I'll
Here,
apologize.
John. Absolutely.
Couple things. Ross Leedy and Jill Lampert are also co-chairing the event. And
Absolutely.
I was involved last year, and I'm doing a little bit of backseat coaching on this one. So Ross and Jill have really
full
been
shout out
responsible
to
for
Ross
pulling everything together. And I also
yeah.
want to thank you and your team for getting involved. Last year, you really changed the entire dynamic of the symposium. You truly are a master moderator.
Wow.
And so we appreciate you doing it last year and again, and being part of the family.
Well, it's our total pleasure to be involved. We find it fascinating. And well, I think one of the interesting issues in today's world is what we're learning and talking about, and what is generally the energy discussion on college campuses and in grad schools. And those are places where intellectual honesty is supposed to reign supreme. And Texas, what you've created there, all of you at Texas, is so impressive. Would you mind talking a little bit about the history again, Senator? Because I do think it's so unique how it's come together between engineering and law and business, and of course Texas as a capital of energy. I think that gives it a real boost that other places would be hard pressed to match.
Absolutely. When really Jay Hartzell was in the early group that put together our center. And originally it was the business school and the law school, because Texas has very unique laws for oil and gas and for energy in general. And so we decided that it should be a UT center that had both of the two schools. And as it has evolved, we have added the engineering school now as the third school. And we are going to have a surprise announcement that we will make at the symposium, and that is that we're adding the School of Geosciences. So we will have 4 schools, which really makes us unique in America for an academic energy center that is all of the above, that it is our stable of oil and gas and how we do it the best of anywhere in the world for cleanliness and for efficiency and for abundant energy, which is the backbone of our economy. But then we also are in the forefront of the new things that are happening. As you know, Maynard, Texas is the leader in wind and solar power. The actual production and use of wind and solar, Texas is number one in that arena. But we're also doing great research at the University of Texas and throughout on hydrogen as a new source of energy, on nuclear as a new source of energy that's affordable. Nuclear's been there, hydrogen's been there, but we're trying to get it into smaller silos, and the research is trying to make it more affordable so that it really can add to the mix that makes for a stable energy source. So our center is just going like great guns in our 10 years. We're in our 10th year now, and it's doing all of the above. And many of the energy centers around America, in the academic community especially, don't want to deal with oil and gas. And we think it's essential to deal with oil and gas, because if we're going to have AI and crypto and those things that are going to take more energy, not less, but more, we've got to have a stable source so that we can be the leader in those new sources of technology. And we are, in fact, leading the world in that regard as well, but we've got to keep it up. So I'm excited about our center, its uniqueness, and I think it's just we're going to build on the first 10 years and take the next step for the next 10 years.
And maybe, Senators, as while we're on this topic of all the involvement from the various schools, my impression is there's certainly a lot of undergraduate involvement. It's not just necessarily the researchers or the professors or the visiting scholars, but there's a lot of undergraduates who get involved. Would you mind just talking about the undergraduate component of all this?
I think we have the best student programming of anything that I have seen out there. And we have, first of all, a student advisory council. They meet at least once a month, but they have other meetings like industry nights in all of our schools. So we have engineering students that meet with the business students and the law students. And now we're adding, of course, geosciences. And those students love meeting the other students in the different venues, because it shows them the careers that are available are vast in this energy field. And we have an energy minor that we are supporting now out of the business school. And we take our students, we had 27 this year that participated in it. They get 12 credit hours over the summer, going to school Monday through Thursday. And then we do a field trip on Fridays. So we've been to Midland, we've been to Houston, Dallas. We are trying to show them the many areas of energy that they might pursue for their careers. And I think I think our student programming is among the most exciting things that we do. And then the symposium is for the energy people, practitioners, the people who are in the business, the leaders in the business, to hear what's being done in other places, to hear what's new in Texas. And so we think that our symposium is really always fresh and new. And you having been an integral part of that, both of you actually have seen that evolve as well. And people come back year after year. We have 400 to 500 people who come. And of course, our energy students, from any of our schools, are welcome to come as well. And it really is an invigorating time for all of us to talk about what we're doing.
Well, and as I recall, even a small subset of the band showed up and played a little music. So it's kind of full contact.
They'll be back because if you recall, September the 13th is going to be the week after the Michigan game.
Yes.
And we will have beaten Michigan, so there'll be a lot of excitement like there was last year after we beat Alabama.
This is
good. So they will be back, and the energy level will be extraordinarily high.
That is fun stuff.
For the event. But going back to the students, I think there were 500 people plus or minus at the symposium last year, which was the highest level we've ever seen, 125 students. And they've done a fantastic job. And it was really one of the core mandates or objectives of the center was to create some curriculum. So there's cross-fertilization among the business students, the law students, and then over time, engineering and geology, like there used to be back in the 70s and 80s, we used to have actual degrees.
Yes, and just to jump in there, I speak at these student advisory meetings from time to time. Either they have a lunch with a speaker, and I'll be there too, or I'll be the only speaker. And I always ask for a show of hands for the students who are there. And we'll have maybe 5 tables of the students from all the schools. And I ask them to raise their hands if they are from engineering, then law, then business. And the great thing is they're divided not by school. They all want to be with the other school students. So it's always about a third, a third, a third. They're all mixed in the tables. And especially, I have to say, the engineering students love being able to see the other parts of the campus that they just don't see in their curriculum. And we provide that opportunity. And it's really fun to watch them talk about their issues and what they're doing and really learn from each other.
Could I maybe ask you both, because I find this, since talent is an issue for every company and industry, how do I get talented young people? And then energy, because it has become sort of polarized. We got the oil and gas people over here. We got the new tech people over here. And now you've got this holistic center that's, all of the above, this type of philosophy. Are you seeing it show up in the companies that come and recruit? Like, are you noticing the interactions with energy corporates of all flavors? Is it increasing as a result of having the center?
Definitely, they are. More companies are coming in, doing the industry nights, wanting to meet these students who've done the cross-section opportunities. The companies are doing more outreach to these students, and they realize now that the students are learning from each other what else is happening in the industry. One of the things that I learned as a general counsel, obviously with a lawyer in my bank, that so often companies, legal people, and the business people, the finance people, are not aware of the importance of each other, and that there are timelines in a lawsuit or a filing or some dispute that the business people don't realize. So it may cost them a lot of money to lose a timeline. And there are just things like that. That's a simple example, but having them already knowing, and especially these students that are taking it's an undergraduate minor that's given by the Macomb School. We do all of the planning and the making the trip programs. And I think now that is going to be something that they will put on their resumes when they are interviewing. And I think it's going to be an asset for our students when the companies start seeing that these students have a little bit of a head start in knowing all the other parts of an energy business.
I think that's what I'm struck by. I mean, John, I mentioned it. You were in banking, you were in industry. Wouldn't you rather have a young person who's been exposed to multiple angles?
Absolutely. Yeah. And if you'll notice at the very, very bottom of my background, we used to have a degree called petroleum land management. Okay, and so I was I actually had a BBA from what's now called the McCombs, but effectively all my electives were but we took a petroleum engineering elective, a geology elective, oil and gas law. So back in the day, we used to have that degree. It's now called energy management or economics at some other schools. That degree went away, but it was to prepare you effectively to be an energy executive. Okay, that's effectively what we're recreating. I'm going to go back to your point about the symposium. Mine's much more by feel, and I got involved about 6 or 7 years ago. And people don't realize the little transition from a knowledge and understanding of energy, what we've been through in particular. We didn't even have the oil shales until 12 years ago. Okay, so think about what's happened in particular around the symposium and what we've been talking about over the last 6 or 7 years.
Yeah.
And to watch the kids get involved, we seem to be, the oil and gas or hydrocarbon sector seemed to be behind the 8 ball, and everybody was arguing that we're going to lose people and everything. I think the cross-learning on both sides has been phenomenal to watch their attitudes. They are thoroughly enjoying. I have 3 30-something-year-olds. Okay, so get to meet a lot of their friends. They're all in different parts of the industry, and they all just all they talk about, okay, is the stuff we're talking about this in Symposium. Okay, and quite frankly, the format makes it fun, and I'll call it socially relevant because of people like you. So I think it's totally changed everybody's attitude. Mine is much more anecdotal than being up at the university.
Well, I tell you what, we were in a conversation yesterday. This is amazing to me. When you start talking about minerals and critical minerals and mining and that type of activity around the planet, and how the Chinese are so ambitious and aggressive and have staked out so much of that. And then some of the big U.S., the big integrateds will be the ones that maybe go take on the Chinese and some of those types of activities. So, the world is always changing, but these are our flagship companies, and they may go be heroes as they stand up for the Western world trying to secure our energy. That's just a completely different way to think about big oil. So that's why things like the symposium are so helpful, because you update your thinking. Tell us a little bit about the agenda, some of the items that went into it. We know we got a lot on the menu.
You bet. Well, again, it's going to be the 13th, which is, I think we're playing UT San Antonio the next day, so it'll be a fun weekend. We're hoping to have, right now, in terms of the people.
That game is a pick-em, I think. It's going to be close. UT versus UTSA.
We're not going to take anything for granted.
Okay, no, that's right. They are actually pretty good, so I better take that back.
There's a big drop-off when after you beat Michigan and the big house.
Well, you better watch out.
Psychological drop-off.
You better watch out. They'll sneak up on you.
Anyway, and we'll have a dinner. The event is honoring Robert Rolling, who's one of our more illustrious alums, and he will actually be speaking at the symposium. But there will be a dinner the night before on Thursday. And then the actual symposium will be on the 13th from 8 to 5. The topic of discussion is Energizing Tomorrow, tackling today's energy challenges while preparing for the future. And what we're really trying to set up is the notion that we need to deal with reality in the real world and what's happening in the real world today as we prepare for the future. Overall, our first panelist is going to be Eric Cantor. If you'll recall, Eric was the House Majority Leader. He has been for the last 8 or 9 years, I think, a vice chairman at MOLIS, and been traveling around the world thinking about macro geopolitical issues. So like last year, if you recall, we had Michael Semblis, who was the JP Morgan global strategist. We were hoping you and Eric are going to set up kind of the geopolitical background, macroeconomic background to start, and that'll be about an hour, starting at 8:30 in the morning.
And we were talking, Eric's in China, I think, this week. He'll be in a number of places. He's a global guy, and so getting his latest feel for the planet will be really interesting.
An incredibly interesting guy who I hadn't paid much attention to recently, but he's been fascinating to get up to speed on. And then the first panel will be LNG as an enabler of energy. and Julian Ivanko, who is the CEO of Chart, and Corey Grindal, who is the Chief Operating Officer at Cheniere, will be your two panelists. And they're going to be talking about the world of LNG, which is playing and is going to play an integral role, if not the most pivotal role, going forward in the energy business.
So this is an amazing one. I was just thinking, Senator, on LNG, John mentioned it. 12, 13 years ago, oil shale had just really started showing up in volumes. When you took over as ambassador to NATO, was around the time of our first LNG shipments. And now the U.S. is the largest LNG exporter in the world. Is it, when you think about the geopolitical implications of LNG, aren't you just blown away? Because that must have been a huge topic of conversation in Europe.
It was huge. We had Dr. Birol speak to the whole ambassador group, 30 ambassadors. We met about 3 to 4 times a week, and we always had a subject. And Dr. Birol from France, he came and spoke, and he said that energy is going to be the key for security. And furthermore, America would be the biggest producer of oil and natural gas in the world in like 5 years. Well, that was back in 2000, maybe 18. And he saw it then that we would be the leader. And of course, the fact that we were doing it in the most environmentally sound way was part of his presentation. But he said, this is going to be a game changer for geopolitical alliances, because, of course, Russia is out there not doing it cleanly, not doing it with the environmental parameters that we have. And right at the time, and somewhat still, the Europeans were depending on Russia, but they were also seeing that Russia was not reliable, because Russia cut the Ukraine out in the middle of the winter because Ukraine hadn't done what Russia had asked them to do, and Russia was trying to punish them, and so they cut their natural gas off in the middle of the winter. And so, Birol was saying, as we all were saying, we've got to have a stable source for our alliance, our 30 allies that have promised each other that if one is attacked, we're all attacked. We've got to have a reliable energy source and not be dependent on Russia or Iran or any place else for our energy sufficiency except our own trusted sources. And so it was a big topic of conversation at NATO, and something that we talked about, a lot in that geopolitical sense.
It's hard to imagine back in that mindset, but you could kind of see it coming.
Yeah.
Sorry, John, I got us off track. You hit on the agenda a little more.
No, absolutely, and it gives you a lot more color and a sense for what we're going to be doing during the day. We're going to take a networking break, and by the way, the social interaction is critical and a huge part of the symposium. There will be 500 people. The backgrounds will be everybody from the financial industry, all the various industries, leaders in the various industries, policymakers, as well as students. So it's a great mix, and we will have 3 or 4 opportunities, including at the end. The next panel is going to be what we're calling the hidden truths. And the actual topics are still hidden, but the 2 people that are going to be on the panel with you are former Secretary of Energy Dan Brouillette, who was there last year and did a fantastic job. He is now President and CEO of Edison Electric Institute. So the topic will be within the power electric business, and the other panelist will be Dr. Michael Weber, who is at the Cockrell School of Engineering at the University of Texas, and is heavily involved. He has his own business, the Weber Group, heavily involved in the electricity business. And as a matter of fact, one of his guys at the end will be speaking on the AI panel. But fantastic, two fantastic individuals who will be talking about some realities, if you will, some hidden truths around the electric business. And then we're going to skip over to lunch, and we have Dean Lillian Mills, I call her Lily, sorry, who's dean, the new dean. She's been there a couple years of the business school. I'm a big fan of hers because she's one of the few accountants she was running the accounting department, who is the dean of the business school. She is going to have Jim Hackett and Bob Rawlings. Awesome. You can't find two more inspirational, if you will, leaders in the energy business. I call them entrepreneurs. Jim has been more on the corporate, public company side, and Bob Rawlings has built multiple businesses over his whole career, mostly in the private sector. Built multiple energy businesses. Heck, I got to know him. He sold his business and his family business in 1989 to Texaco, and then 2 years later buys Omni Hotels and builds it into one of the biggest chains in this country. He's been in multiple businesses. They've had 40-year, 50-year careers building successful businesses, successful families, and are incredible inspiration, I think, for the whole audience, in particular the students.
So you're right. So Jim Hackett, Bob Rowling, just great, exceptional leaders and people. Senator, does leadership and styles of leadership and sort of how to be an effective leader, is that something that comes up a lot at the center that you help students develop?
Well, for sure. One of the things that the students are able to do is hear from leaders that have made it to the top and their path to get there. And some of them have been so inspirational because they talk about their failures and how they got to where they are, not in a straight line, but in a circuitous route. Some of them didn't even intend to be in the energy business, but they ended up there and they made something out of a career that they had never even envisioned. So that is part of the whole concept of having a student advisory committee or council that we have. And some of the people that have spoken are just amazing and very much showing them that you don't give up if you don't succeed in the first try. You always keep on going, and it's the winner is the one who finishes the race.
Well, now it's hanging right here. I feel like you've had such an incredible career yourself. Would you mind just telling us while we're on this question, was there one thing in your career as you were serving in the Senate and then of course what you've done at the center and what you did at NATO, but was there one moment in your career that was a big influence on where it ultimately went?
You know, if I had to do the cliff notes on my career, what was the most important thing, I would say it's learned when to fight and when to switch, because sometimes you have to go all the way with what you're trying to do. And sometimes you have to step back and maybe compromise to get most of what you wanted, taking it a step at a time and accommodating other people's views and other people's electorate. I mean, when I have been in public office, I never could say to someone who was representing California or New York or Chicago that Texas is the only way to do things. They didn't agree with that. So we would try to work things so that it was a positive for everyone. And I think that's in my career, which is mostly political and somewhat diplomatic, although I never thought I would be a diplomat. The experience at NATO was a great one because I just loved it. I loved my colleagues. It was like a an extended family in a way, even though we disagreed sometimes. And we did a lot of negotiation to get to a point where we could have a unanimous consent, because at NATO, everything has to be unanimous. And so it was quite a different experience from the United States Senate, when it was a little tougher.
Unanimous is a high bar. It's, yeah.
It is.
Well, John, tell us what happens in the afternoon.
You bet. Well, we, as you recall, last year we also tried to do something. We tried to make sure that everybody stayed, okay, till the end.
You gotta have an anchor.
We got to have an anchor, and we had Admiral McRaven and Secretary of Commerce Don Evans at the end on purpose. This time we're going to move into effectively the technology world and the AI world. We're going to kick off right after lunch with a TED Talk type speech from Mark Mills. Mark, by background, is a physicist. He's written a number of books. He's been at the Manhattan Institute, just moved down to the Texas Public Policy Foundation, where he is a senior fellow. He's one of the smarter guys I've ever been around.
Yeah.
He actually wrote a book called The Bottomless Well in 2003 with Peter Huber that was about as impactful as anything I've ever read. So Mark will be speaking for about 35 minutes. He's written a new book called The Cloud Revolution, which is really on the emergence of the technologies around information, materials, and machines, and the cloud. And where we're going. So it's an incredible talk and the impact on energy. So he will talk, and then he's going to sit with you, and you're going to have the opportunity to make sure we all understand what he just said.
Right. That's funny.
And I promise you, we're going to have to.
That'll be fun.
He's been at the Symposium a couple times, and he's just world class, and world class human too. Then we're going to skip into another panel called The Future of Energy Storage. We have Matteo Giramillo, who is the CEO and founder of Form Energy, which is building out a battery manufacturing business in the States. He came from Tesla. He ran their storage technology business. And Pat Wood, who's been a lifelong entrepreneur, policymaker in the energy space. Ashley Zumwalt Forbes, who's Deputy Director for Batteries and Critical Minerals for the DOE. And by the way, I looked up I'd never met Ashley or never seen her, and I looked up her bio yesterday. These people are young and smart. It is impressive. In particular, Ashley. And then the final panel is going to be directly on AI. And we have Dr. Joshua Rhodes, who's a research scientist with the Weber Group, another young person who's going to be speaking with Dr. Robin Tooley, who is now founder and vice chairman of Physics X. But after reading his background, he also did a couple cool things, like won a couple Formula Ones. He was the chief technology officer for a number of racing teams. And what they're trying to do is take physics and AI and physics and trying to enhance machines. Incredibly interesting guy. So I think the last panel, everybody's going to want to stay for, in particular the young people. And then we're going to break and go have a happy hour.
Doesn't this get to, I mean, it's a fantastic agenda. Huge kudos to everyone here that this is such a neat day coming together. But it also speaks to why energy is such a fun field, because it's got so many angles. The things you just went through, AI, power, leadership, entrepreneurialism, and of course geopolitics. Like, it's just, I don't know another casserole like this one that has this many flavors.
One other thing that we're going to have a formal introduction, but we have a new executive director, Jack Balasia, the former Exxon general counsel, who has been teaching at the law school for several years since he retired from Exxon, and has really given back so much. And he has just started yesterday as our new executive director. And I think that he is going to add a huge dimension to our center and the things that we can do, the people that he knows in the business, as well as the solar, wind. He's good on all of those aspects, and he's a real leader and a success story. So we're excited about that. That's why I was in Austin to meet with him as he is just coming on board. He's teaching a class at the Texas Law School, and then he's coming on as executive director of the center. So we're very, very excited that Jack is joining our team.
I think it's really interesting if you, I noticed this with a friend of mine who's from California, and we were talking about energy. And now, it was to your point earlier, Senator, if you say, I'm from Texas, and my thoughts on energy are blank. Well, 10 years ago, that meant you're an oil and gas person, and these are my thoughts on energy. If you say it now, totally. Texas is the leader in virtually almost every aspect of energy.
You know, and maybe I'm going to add one thing to that. You're absolutely right. And in addition to what we've talked about, wind and solar and hydrogen and nuclear, we also have in the Jackson School of Geosciences, they are looking for rare earth minerals that might be able to be part of the battery storage issue that would make the wind and solar much more stable and reliable. And so that's one of the things that they're going to bring to the table, a real research component. So we're very excited about Texas being, well, you know, we have the Nobel laureate that invented and perfected the lithium ion battery. And that all was done in a research center at the University of Texas by Dr. Goodenough. And then we still have that same research center, and they're doing a lot with other rare earth minerals that everybody wants to find more sustainability, and geosciences is in the forefront.
No, it's going to be so impressive. Well, I've got a total, we've got to wrap up because I promised you guys I wouldn't go too long, but there's so much to discuss. But Senator, before we lose you, what's going on in Europe right now is fascinating. It has been, unfortunately, for a while with the invasion of Ukraine. But today, we have Ukrainian troops on Russian soil. They've been there, I guess this incursion has been going on for 2 or 3 weeks, but it's a dramatic event. I can't tell that the world comprehends it, or maybe it's not as big as I think it is, but how big is that? What as you look with your NATO hat on at what's happening in Europe, and in particular with that war, what is the latest? What are your latest thoughts?
You know, I think it's such a good question, Maynard, because I don't think people realize how much that altercation, that Russian invasion of Ukraine, is a security issue for America as well as our European allies. Our European allies, of course, are closer to Putin's domination of a free country like Ukraine. And I think that people don't think that, well, that's not our issue. It is our issue, because there is no question that Putin is not going to stop if he is successful at really bringing down Ukraine. He will go the next step, and it will be a NATO country eventually. He wants to challenge NATO. He wants to recreate the Soviet Union. He has told people that heard it directly from him that the worst thing that ever happened in the history of the last century of Russia is the breakup of the Soviet Union. And that he considered Gorbachev a traitor to let those countries be free. So we know, those of us who have dealt with the Putin and his efforts and his just determined policies, we know that if he goes into a NATO country, we're in the war. Our kids are going to be on the ground in Europe again. And what we're trying to avoid by helping Ukraine is to prevent our kids from being on the ground. But we have a commitment. We have made our sacred oath that we would protect any country in the NATO alliance that is attacked, because we know eventually it would affect us. So helping Ukraine is not a European issue. It is an American and a European alliance issue. And I think that what Volodymyr Zelensky has done is very bold, but he was just sitting there for 2 years now, taking the heartbreaking destruction of his people and his infrastructure without the ability to use the weapons that we have given to go in and bomb the bases where the drones and the missiles are coming from. And now he's saying to the allies, we've got to have the freedom to take out the bases. They're not intending to go beyond that, but they have sat and taken it. And as long as Russia knows that it's a free hit for them, and they don't have to worry about being hit back, they're going to keep doing it. And they've shown that for 2 years. So I think it's time for us to say, you have the ability to take out as a deterrence and a defense issue the bases where the drones and the missiles are coming from that are killing the citizens of that country.
Well, it's an incredible situation. It's worrisome, but you're right. Now they're fighting back. They don't have an arm behind their back anymore. They're doing what they ought to be able to do. So we're lucky to have people as experienced and thoughtful as you tell the rest of us how to understand it, because it is very complicated and worrisome. Well, we will attach the agenda to this blast so everybody can see it. And
Appreciate
the public at large is free to come?
Absolutely.
Free to register?
Yep. And there's a website you can register on.
Well,
and we still have a little bit of space. So hurry.
All right. I think spaces are going fast. Yeah. So if you're listening or watching, please tune in. And if you have a minute, I know from my own involvement, it's fabulous and it's going to be amazing this year. So thank you so much for joining us and talking about it today.
Thank you, Maynard. It was great. A great interview, as always, by you. And thank you, John, for all you've done with the other leaders of the program. That's what has made this so dynamic. So I'm hoping that more of the people who maybe haven't heard about our symposium and what the university is doing that will come to Austin and be with us on Friday the 13th in September.
Fantastic. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks to all of you.